pleased to be joined now by Jennifer Hammond from Fox 2 News Detroit. She is one of their sports reporters, joining us now on the Oakland County Megacast. Hammer, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, good to talk to you guys today.
Good to talk to you as well. So sports are finally back. It's an exciting time to be a sports fan, even a fan of the Detroit Tigers, where many people maybe weren't expecting them to have started off the season as well as they did. Let's just start off by talking about the Detroit Tigers, because this is a young team with a lot of talent in the farm system, a lot of talent on their major league roster, and a lot of great veteran presence as well in their locker room. They started off with a little bit of a surge. Of course, they hit a couple of games where they were postponed or canceled due to COVID and to rain, but it looks like the Tigers are surging right now. Do you believe that they have a potential, because they're so young and they still have that veteran presence in their locker room, that this is a team in a shortened season that could be a surprise contender in the American League?
Well, I think they've already been a surprise contender already to a certain extent, and mostly in the form of their bullpen pitching and their clutch hitting. And those are two of the most important things that really any baseball team needs. What we have seen is that there are some young guys that have come up. We're not seeing Casey Mize yet. I know that everybody is really amped for that to happen. That will still come, but they've got some guys that they're working with. Certainly they've gotten huge additions and contributions from guys like CJ Crone and also Jonathan Scope and Jones. Jacoby Jones has been incredible with the bat so far, and also with, flashing the leather a little bit there. And so I think some of those things, they're just going to kind of ride it out and see how those guys go. It is interesting that they took the first series from the Reds, and then just over the weekend, the Reds kind of came back and got them. But I think one thing we're seeing from this team is that they're really never down and out. They've shown a lot of late game heroics and things like that. They've got some pop, and I think that they may be a decent contender in the Central this year.
Jen, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think are the chances that they're actually going to finish this baseball season?
I had it at 10 from the beginning. I knew that there would be bumps, and I knew that there would be a lot of teams that went through these situations with positive tests. But for the most part, and give the Tigers credit, they have taken full control of this thing. And these guys and a lot of veteran leadership in that clubhouse, they have made sure that they're not going out to bars. They're not doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I mean, to a certain extent, your job depends on your health. So many of these players almost have to quarantine all over again. And a lot of them are saying that, I think until the professional athletes that aren't in some kind of bubble situation understand that their commitment and their responsibility to their teammates, to their league, and to their family through their livelihoods is completely incumbent upon them staying home, staying safe. You don't just run out to the grocery store. You just don't run out to dinner during the season. This is a time when everyone has to be hyper vigilant. And I think the Tigers have done a really good job, whether that's messaging from Ron Gardenhire or from some of the veterans. They, from the beginning, when they first got a couple of positive tests through Norris and Reyes and a couple of other guys, I think it kind of the light bulb went on, and they said, we gotta stay safe, we gotta stay healthy, and they've done so. Obviously we've learned certain situations with the Marlins and some other teams where there's been a little bit of irresponsibility with the pandemic, and I think that's resulted in their massive cases, positive test cases, and whether those are real positives or not, as we saw this week with Matthew Stafford, it's so incredible. There's so many different scenarios where there are false negatives and false positives, and they've got to keep on testing. But baseball is doing it right by doing it every other day.
Yeah, baseball has been doing really well, and I think the Tigers, like you had said, they had their issues early on before the season even started, and then they just started to take it really seriously. They have that on lockdown, and they're a great example for the rest of Major League Baseball, and they've created some certainty in their locker room that they're going to remain safe. A sense of uncertainty, however, on the football side, especially in college football, where a lot of teams, the University of Connecticut has canceled their season. Many leagues have decided to forego having football this season. The Big Ten just released its schedule yesterday, its modified schedule that includes only Big Ten play and features a lot of changes, most notably in our area, that the Michigan and Michigan State game is going to be at Michigan Stadium instead of at Spartan Stadium, which for a Sparty like me is very disappointing, but football is football. Do you
It's not
believe?
that loud in Ann Arbor. Don't worry about that.
Oh no, they haven't been for a while. It'll be okay. By then their hopes will be gone. So on the side of football, it's a little more murky now. It's much more of a contact sport than something like baseball is. They're not going to have a bubble system like you're seeing in the NBA and in the NHL, other contact sports. And we're seeing a lot of players already starting to drop out of their play. Do you think, at least on the NCAA level and definitely on the NFL level, that these seasons are going to play out? Do you think they're going to be further delayed possibly, or that they may end up playing some games and then potentially canceling the seasons?
Well, that is really hard to say. That's a lot of questions, and those are a lot of loaded questions. Let's start just first simply with the NCAA season. Based on what we've seen at Rutgers, based on what we've seen from other teams not wanting to play, Ivy League foregoing their season, I do think that it's a very different animal when you're talking about college kids who are still teenagers and college students. There's going to be a lot of online learning, so that may keep some of the numbers down in the dorms. I know I have a college sophomore who's going back to Central. He's not a student athlete, but our concerns were, do we send him back, even if his classes are online, to be in kind of that incubator, which is a dorm and could potentially, foster a large outbreak of the virus. We are still under the impression or under the belief that it is better for him to be away at school, trying to learn and grow and use his protocols. I think every student is different. And with these college kids, if they have a huge outbreak on campus, that will basically shut it down. And now they've seen more deaths among teens, and there have been some other, cases where graduation parties have exploded. So young people, despite what you might hear mixed messaging from, Washington, that the young people are not affected by the virus, it can impact anyone. And I always say, just wait till one kid, God forbid, on a college football team dies because they were, told they needed to play to keep their scholarship. I think it's a really slippery slope. I don't have as much confidence in college football getting through the season or even getting off the ground as the NFL. Now, with that said, the NFL certainly, it's a whole different ballgame. I mean, these are professionals. You've seen, or maybe you haven't seen, the Lions have completely retrofitted their entire practice facility in Allen Park to take care of every single thing. They've spread out their dining. They have an additional tent outside. No one will sit and eat any closer than 6 feet apart. When you walk in, you get a scan immediately. You've got all of this PPE that you have to wear, and they've got all of these separations. They've got their locker rooms spread out all over the building. Their indoor practice facility is a huge meeting room. And I think they have the money to do these things. These college institutions don't have the money to do these things, let alone if students aren't all coming back to campus, they're really going to be hemorrhaging money and their budgets are going to be a disaster. And so college is really a double-edged sword, because a program like the University of Michigan or even Michigan State, they need the football program to keep them viable financially to a certain extent, but there's no guarantees that they can keep those kids healthy and have the money to do so in a proper fashion. Whereas the NFL, and plus, that is multiple billion-dollar industry, they will get the NFL going, I believe. And what they'll do is what they've been doing. If a guy tests positive, they send him home and he goes into quarantine. He does his 10 or 14 days. And then when he comes back, if he has, I think you have to have 2 positives to return to work, because false positives are a real issue right now. Until they get the testing, I think, really fine-tuned, it's going to be a problem for any sport. But at the extent that the NFL can afford some of these hiccups, they'll be able to handle and weather a season, I think, much more capably than the NCAA.
Still a lot of question marks remaining for the NFL season as that's quickly approaching, NCAA season as well, and we'll definitely stay on top of that as time goes on. We're joined by Jennifer Hammond, sports reporter at Fox 2 News Detroit, and Hammond, to transition to something a lot less light than sports in the Metro Detroit area. Obviously, this week we had the tragic news of the passing of 97.1 The Ticket radio personality, Detroit sports writer, Fox 2 contributor as well, Jamie Samuelson, from colon cancer at the age of 48. Talk a little bit to us about, for those who maybe aren't familiar with Jamie's work or didn't know Jamie, about the person that he was and a little bit about his story as he was battling through this fight.
Yeah. And it was a battle, and it was a silent battle. A lot of people didn't know about it. It's interesting when you read off his credentials and his resume: radio, TV, newspaper. He really was one of those guys that instead of being a jack of all trades, he was a master of all trades, because everything he did so well, so brilliantly, and with such grace. And at the same time, he was a dedicated father. He was a great friend. When he was diagnosed, a few of us were made aware of the diagnosis. And I remember just sobbing when he told me back in, I think it was January or February of 2019. And his first reaction was to comfort me. And I just thought, oh my God. I'm like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? This isn't about me. And, he fought so valiantly. They crisscrossed the United States, he and his amazing wife, Christy, to make sure they could leave no stone unturned as far as treatments and tests and protocols. And I think he was, trying to do any kind of cutting edge or new procedures to battle that cancer. And ultimately it just kept spreading. And he thought, well, maybe I can live with a chronic illness and we'll just continue to fight it like that. But in the end, the last month of his life, it had spread to his bile duct, and he was accumulating fluid in his lungs and his abdomen, and he couldn't continue with his chemotherapy. And it just was a really sad situation. And when he went on the air last Monday, it really struck me when he said, this isn't goodbye. I'll be back, but this isn't goodbye. And I just had this sinking feeling in my pit. And then we went over and visited him a day later and essentially said goodbye to him, which it's interesting because he said, this is so hard, but it's really been a blessing because I've been able to say goodbye. He saw his parents. They came in from San Francisco before he passed. His children were around him, and converse that with, I had just found out yesterday that an acquaintance of mine, a gentleman who had worked at an establishment that I often went to eat and drink, was killed in a motorcycle accident a week ago, tragically, suddenly. And I thought to myself, how do you put in perspective, one person doesn't know it's coming, the other person knows it's coming. And I think it's all a great lesson. And Jamie even said this to us, live life. And I know that we always see circumstances and things that remind us to live life. But I think every day you have to just wake up with gratitude, knowing that nothing is guaranteed. None of us knows how long we have, but it's what we do with our lives and who we spend it with. That's really the most important. And I think Jamie was really a shining example of just doing everything the right way. And he is greatly missed already, and he will continue to be, especially in his children's lives as they go through, life events. I lost my father when I was in college, and at my wedding, I remember thinking, who's going to give me away? And of course, my brother dutifully and lovingly filled in to do that. And these are just things that will face these kids for the rest of their lives.
We've lost two great people in the sports world, Tom Kowalski and now Jamie. Each one an inspiration in how they live their life, but also in their death, and that they continue to give. Tom through his organization and helping the kids around Christmas time, but also Jamie now having the courage to come out and talk about colon cancer and the importance of guys paying attention to their body and trying to get tested so that they're saving lives.
Absolutely, Ronnie. And one of the things, our friend Matt Riley, who is the one that really makes that Killer Cares Christmas charity at the Lodge go and provides so many services and funds for Team Joseph and for Kids in Kigo to get their Christmas. We've already had conversations about honoring Jamie. And one of the last things I said to Jamie in his room when I said goodbye to him, other than I love you, was, I am going to be the greatest champion for your cause. And we're going to make sure that your legacy continues on. And if people can understand that a simple colonoscopy could potentially save your life, I think that message needs to get out there. The message also needs to get out there that the Cancer Society, the American Cancer Society, has recently changed the guidelines from your first colonoscopy should be at the age of 50 to 45. So they're finding that more people in their 40s, and Jamie was, I think, 46 or 47 when he was diagnosed. More people in their 40s are, contracting this insidious disease and many other cancers. Cancer is so prevalent, and it's a silent killer. People many times are stage 4 before they've even had a single symptom. So we are going to work to make sure, and I know you're going to be right alongside us, Ronnie, because you always are, making sure that we continue to raise awareness and keep Jamie's memory alive and Tom's memory alive by helping people and saving other lives, making them better.
Jennifer Hammond with us from Fox 2 Detroit. She's a sports reporter at Fox 2, worked closely with Jamie Samuelson for many years. And there's a great article written by Bob Winowski in the Detroit News, and where he talked about Jamie. And a couple of the points that really popped out to me, there's several that did, was that really described from what I've heard from all the stories about Jamie, and from having listened to him on the radio and been an admirer of him as a young person in this industry. He said Jamie didn't need to be the star, didn't need to have the loudest voice, the most bombastic personality, but was brilliant in so many ways. He continued on and later said, in one of my last phone conversations with Jamie, he struggled to get the words out and then said something that stopped me cold. He said he was afraid he'd die without making an impact in his 25 years here. And that for me popped out, not because of how long he was in the industry here and how much he was doing, necessarily that he didn't do enough, but he was more focused on the impact he was having on the people who read his articles, the people who listened to him on the ticket, the people that saw him on Fox 2, and the people that he interacted with in those places.
Yeah.
Talk to Jamie's heart about how much he cared about the people he worked with, the people of the city of Detroit, and especially his family.
Well, you show me somebody who says I don't care what other people think of me, and I'll point at a liar. Because anyone who says that, I've just never bought that notion that people, as humans, we need to be accepted. We need to be loved. That is part of the condition, the human condition. And Jamie was very much that human condition, although at times you would never know that he needed to be loved because he fought so hard for his career in the beginning. So I met him in '94 when we first started. WDFM went on the air July 11th. Of 1994, and he had come from Chicago working at the Illinois News Network. I had come from Chicago working at CLTV, and we both lived in the Millender Center. The company had put us up there for a month until we could find places to live. So we went one night down to Greektown to go to dinner, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll take you. We'll go to Greektown, because I, being a native Detroiter, thought I got this. I know the city. So we go and we eat, and we shared a pitcher of beer, and of course, that nervous kind of, oh, do you drink? Do you want a beer? Do you like beer? So we started drinking a couple of beers and had several pitchers of beer and just started talking it was such easy conversation with Jamie always, and laughing. And then we started walking around, and he's like, well, what is there to do in Detroit? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, not a lot. I haven't lived here for 6 years. So we got on the People Mover. We went to the People Mover stop, and we got on it and took a ride. And he's like, is that it? And I just remember thinking, what great, he was so irreverent, and it was just so great the way he said it. And here I am like, I'm the native Detroiter. I'm going to show you how cool Detroit is. And we just went around the block on the People Mover. So from that point on, we were really, really good friends. And so many moments of my life when we've done things. He was at my wedding. I was at his wedding. And, his children have been on our show. There's just a lot of light when Jamie was in the room, just a sweet, wonderful guy. And we're going to wrap our arms around his wife and his kids. And I haven't read Wojo's column actually yet. I told him that yesterday. I said, I can't. I haven't been able to find the time because I know it's going to take me out at the knees. And I don't know when I will, because I've heard a lot and seen a lot of their relationship. So it's been a really hard week. Surreal, very surreal week.
Jennifer Hammond with us, sports reporter at Fox 2 News Detroit, and also a close friend for many years of Jamie Samuelson. Before we let you go, Hammer, anything else that you'd like to touch on today, or how can people get involved in battling colon cancer in Jamie's honor with, of course, his community of colleagues, friends, family, and people in the city of Detroit?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Well, the first thing they can do, obviously, is call and schedule their own colonoscopy. If you're 45, if you're 44 and a half, if you're 50, if you're 55, and you haven't had your colonoscopy yet, call and get it scheduled. We actually had Mike Stone, Jamie's morning show host, co-host of The Ticket, said that a friend of his who's a colonoscopy doctor, I don't even know exactly what a colonoscopy doctor is called, but they've had a huge increase in people calling to schedule colonoscopies. And it is by no accident that Jamie has helped that message. So call and get your colonoscopy scheduled, and stay tuned, because by whenever it is healthy and safe for us all to gather again, we will be together, not only in a memorial, a tribute to Jamie, remembering Jamie, but also fundraising for anyone who has colon cancer, who needs to get screening, who maybe doesn't have health insurance, who doesn't have access, anything. It's so important. These screening things are so easy to do. I had my first colonoscopy at 50, and it was great when there were no polyps. And he said, you know what, see you in 10 years. And I think I may go back after 6 years, just to make sure, just to make sure. And your insurance covers a colonoscopy if you have it. If you don't, then we're going to make sure that there's a place where people can go to get help, so they can get a colonoscopy, so no one else has to suffer and go through this horrible death.
Well, we thank you very much for being with us today.
Nice to talk to you guys.
Nice to talk to you as well. Anytime. Jennifer Hammond from Fox 2 Detroit, sports reporter and a close friend of Jamie Samuelson.